Hey everyone, welcome to the latest Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Ray Didinger will join us in just a little bit to talk about the Raiders game and also look ahead to the Lions. We talk a little bit about Gardner Minshew with him as well and Jalen Hurts and get into that. We want to talk about the receivers, but we have to start with botany.
Yeah, and I'm going to try not to make any puns, any jokes. I'm going to try to play it straight here.
I might have gotten them out of my system yesterday.
Yeah, well, like 20 tweets of them.
No, I only went with two.
Well, air raid was the best. The air raid offense was.
Yeah, I was proud of that one. And it's not even like I was making fun of him. I can't help myself with puns.
Yeah, how can you not? And yeah, and look, by now everybody has seen the clip of Nick Sirianni talking about his metaphor that he presented to the team about a plant growing and the roots are getting stronger and stronger. You're building the foundation, but people on the outside don't see the improvement because the flower hasn't sprouted yet. It makes sense, and that was his message to the team. Kind of got roundly mocked for it. He's a different kind of guy, and he's got a lot of these stories and a lot of these metaphors and analogies, and I try not to make. I mean, I wrote a story about it. I try not to make fun of it because he's got his way of coaching, and today I asked 3 players about it. We don't have that many players to talk to. So I asked who I was with, and that was TJ Edwards, Avante Maddox, and Jack Stahl. So it's not like I asked Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, and Rodney McLeod about it. We only get presented with a handful of players every day to talk to, but they all said, he really gets our attention with his talks because they're different, and he's passionate about it, and he's got he brings a lot of energy, and they're fun, and they're unlike anything we've ever heard from a coach before. So they really get our attention. And, the notion that, look, it's easy to make the high school Harry comparisons, and it's understandable. And I've done some of that myself. Some of the stuff, the dog mentality stuff, it rings hollow to me. But the real test is if he gets through his team. That's all that really matters. And I think we'll get to the answer to that Sunday and over the next few Sundays. But it was, and I wasn't completely innocent of making fun of him, because we were all making puns and making jokes, and I actually thought about bringing a potted plant to the podcast and having it sitting on but if it works, it works. And what we think doesn't really matter. And he believes this stuff. And if the players buy in, if the players, it does make sense. I mean, the metaphor does make sense if they really are improving. And we don't know that. There's all this improvement going on in the background. He says there is.
And that's really the point of the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we talk right now, I realize this plant behind me, which is fake, sorry to give away some secrets here, but I really should have every few minutes just like raised it up as we talked. No, but yeah, it's people are pissed off right now. Fans are mad, and the team's 2-5, and they don't want to hear their head football coach talking about the team being a flower. I get it. It's nothing anyone wants to hear, but there's also nothing he can say on a Wednesday that changed the fact that they're 2-5. And the change the fact that we haven't seen the improvement from them that they claim they're getting.
Right.
Which, while that's his point of the story, it doesn't, it doesn't make you fans feel any better about the situation. I get that. But it also doesn't mean he's in over his head. I think if you want to say he's in over his head, you watch the offense.
Right.
You don't watch his press conference, you know? So he's kind of a goofy guy. We've seen the awkward press conference moments with him before. We saw the introductory press conference. We remember rock, paper, scissors. Like, we remember all this stuff. And if they're winning, no one cares about it. if they're losing, it gets magnified, and there's not a causation. I don't think. Like the only causation would be if the players in the team meeting room had the same reaction the fans did, and we don't know if they did. There's a chance they did, but there's also a chance that they liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Avante Maddox, he was like glowing, talking about it. He's like, man, never had a coach like that who put things in those kind of terms. And yeah, he's got a story for everything. And it really made sense. It's like, yeah, we are getting better. Just people haven't seen it yet. And, he was really kind of very, engaged talking about it. And does that turn into wins? I don't know. But, we'll see. And I think the reason a lot of fans kind of were, I mean, look, like you said, they've lost 6 out of their last 7 games and they're getting blown out and they're not a good football team right now. But Nick is just very different. I mean, he's not.
Be fair to them. They only lost 5 of their last 7.
They've lost 5 of their last 6. I'm sorry. But yeah, but he's different than other head coaches that we're used to seeing. I mean, he doesn't come across like a Ray Rhodes tough guy, or a Buddy Ryan tough guy. Doug was a little different, but Doug was a football lifer. I think we're used to just seeing head coaches speak in certain ways and say the same kind of things, and he's just different. No, he's different. Yeah, like you said, that doesn't make him a bad coach. What we see on the field makes him a bad coach so far. So we'll see what happens next. I think, I mean, you look at their schedule, and I mean, it's certainly a lot easier, between now and that last Dallas game, and they might not even be playing their starters by then. Neither team might be, who knows? But I mean, there's a lot of winnable games there on paper, and so. We'll see how it goes. I know when I did my predictions before the season, I picked every game. I had them 2-7, and then I had them winning like 5 straight. So, that Chargers game certainly is an opposing one. I think they're very good, but there's not a lot of those games left. They certainly played.
That's what really makes his messaging so important to the team, because he says they look from game to game, and that they have to as players and coaches. But the rest of us, we looked at the schedule and thought they're going to stink here. They might not be very good early. Then there are winnable games. The key is to keep your players invested and buying in when you're losing. And it's not an easy thing. And I don't know if his strategy is working or if it's not going to work, but that's the key to this, is to get your players to believe in what you're doing when the results aren't there. And that's something that's tough for anyone. It's the old trust the process, but how do you trust the process when it's not yielding results? And why believe in what you're doing if it's not showing up in wins and losses or on the field in general? I think that's what's troubling, is that you're not even seeing incremental improvement. If anything, in some areas you're seeing regression, and that's scary. But as far as his message and the metaphor, I get it. And I also get why fans are annoyed by it.
Yeah. Again, if they were 7-2 and they'd lost their first couple of games, you're like, what turned it around? Well, I had this speech about the plan. If it was in that kind of context, people would think, well, this guy's a genius. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
It's all about wins and losses. That's what everything comes down to.
It's all it's about. And I think Sunday's going to be, look, Jared Goff they faced some elite quarterbacks here. Jared Goff is not one of them. I think there was a point where he kind of looked like one for a while. I never liked him.
He make a Pro Bowl?
I think he did. He might have made 2.
Smoke and mirrors, Sean McVay.
Yeah, exactly. You think about the game, the Eagles quarterback got hurt in LA, and he was really good in that game. He put up, what was it, 43-35?
And that was still billed as these are top 2 picks. These are long-time franchise quarterbacks going up against one another, and obviously it hasn't worked out for Goff or the other one. I won't do it.
No, we've gotten better. We've gotten better at it.
The problem is, in my normal daily life, I sound like an idiot because people are trying to talk to me about him, and I won't say it there because, like, I'm trying to make sure you don't get
the habit of it.
Yeah.
I won't say it either. Like, somebody will ask me about him, like, I'm wherever, and I just won't say his name. They think I'm nuts, but like, you have to get in that mode, or else you'll do it on the podcast. You have to train yourself. We're nuts, by the way. Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. All the details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
Joining us now on the Eagle Eye podcast, as he does every week, Ray Didinger. Ray, we were just talking before we started this. Me, you, and Rube all picked the Raiders last week, but we all thought it was going to be at least a little bit closer than that, right?
Yeah, I did. As I said to you guys last week, I really liked the way the Raiders played against Denver. It really looked like they played with a purpose. It really looked like they had rallied after the whole Gruden debacle, and they played well out in Denver. They really did. So I liked them going into this game, but I didn't expect them to dominate the game the way they did, to the degree that they did. That was, if you're looking at it from an Eagles standpoint, that was pretty discouraging.
Yeah, it really was. And I think that the guy who's kind of been under fire most in the few days since has been Jonathan Gannon and his defense. And it's really, the philosophy that's kind of been under fire now for a little while here, this really passive cover two shell that allows teams to drive up and down on the field. Derek Carr was 31 of 34. How surprised were you, Ray, that he let it go on for that entire game?
I was very surprised that he let it go for 4 quarters. I kind of thought that might be the case in the first half, because the Raiders had really hit a lot of big plays in Denver. I mean, they hit Carr hit 7 passes of 25 yards or more in that game. I mean, he was going vertical big time with great success. So I had a feeling, given Gannon's propensity to play the cover 2 anyway, I thought, well, Letape is going to, he's definitely going to play the 2 high safeties against this offense, because they're looking to strike down the field. But in the first half, when you saw that, Carr completely adjusted and took what the defense was giving him, which is all the underneath stuff, and he was just moving it up and down the field. I certainly thought at halftime, Gannon's going to say, okay, we got to adjust here. We can't let this go on. But they really didn't. I mean, they came out, they blitzed McLeod a couple of times to no real effect. And Carr just picked them apart. I mean, 31 for 34 is just, it's just ridiculous. I mean, Mike Sealski wrote the line that it's like Steph Curry shooting foul shots. That's really kind of what it was like. And it's, throwing a football in the National Football League ain't supposed to be that easy. This week, I'm really kind of curious to see what he does this week, because he's going up against the Detroit Lion team that never throws the ball down the field. I mean, you look at Jared Goff and what they've got with him doing. I mean, the average depth of his routes to this point in the season is under 5. I mean, they never stretch the field, largely because he's not capable of it, and they don't have those kinds of receivers. So there's no excuse for Jonathan Gannon to play that style of defense here. I mean, if he's ever going to be aggressive, if he's ever going to play his corners up, if he's ever going to press and take some more chances, this is the week to do it, because this is one team that doesn't try the deep strike.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, cover 2 it's a really viable formation scheme if you get stops on third down, if you tackle well, if you force turnovers, if your linebackers are active and physical and making plays and not letting those 3, 4, 5 yard completions turn into 12-yard completions. But those are all things the Eagles are bad at.
Yeah.
I don't think you can run this without good linebackers. They certainly don't have that.
No, I think that's a real big problem. The other thing about this is teams have run this successfully before, but almost all the teams that have been good at it and won with it are teams that are really good in the red zone. That maybe a team will move the ball and they'll complete some passes, but you get inside the 20 and they just shut you down. And that's not true of this team either. They haven't been good defending in the red zone either. So Yeah, I kind of want to see how they play this. I mean, one of the things that we know with the Lions, and this certainly plays into what you were talking about, Rube, in the linebackers with the Eagles, is they throw the ball to Swift a ton. I mean, he's
Like
their
40
big,
catches.
he's their big receiving threat, really. And so when you've got a team like the Eagles, I don't know that they have a linebacker that can play him in the flat or circle routes or anything like that. So they're going to have to find some kind of an answer, because I guarantee you the game plan coming into this from a Lions standpoint certainly is going to be throw the ball to Swift, because he's their best weapon, and that's how they attack it. And if you look at this defense, the Eagles right now don't seem to me to have the personnel to make that play.
Yeah, and he's averaging like 10 yards a catch as a running back. He's a Philly kid, obviously, really more of a receiving threat than a runner. I mean, he's averaging like 3.5 yards a carry, but they just kind of almost like Gainwell, I guess. I mean, I think Gainwell's maybe, a little higher than that as a runner, but Gainwell's really just a receiving back. And boy, I tell you what, Swift is really dangerous that way. I mean, the way the Eagles linebackers are, he might have 10, 12 targets on Sunday.
Oh, I'd absolutely bet on that. I'd absolutely bet on that, because they do it a lot. I mean, that's the best thing that they do. But Goff is such to me such a problematic quarterback. I mean, they had a chance to win that game, and they had Swift out on a flat route where he's wide open, and Goff missed him. And instead of scoring a touchdown, they wound up kicking a field goal. And that's sort of where the game began to get away from the Lions last week. So even though these are largely high percentage type throws, Goff isn't even capable of hitting all of those. I mean, that's, to me, is the Eagles, the best thing the Eagles have working for them going into this game is that Jared Goff comes out and plays like Sam Darnold did a couple of weeks ago. And he's entirely capable of that. And that's, if you're an Eagles fan, that's kind of where you've got to put your hopes.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, we've seen the teams that have beaten them this year gotten good quarterback play for the most part. So, yeah, I guess there's that hope that, this defense can play well against mediocre to bad quarterbacks, and they might get that from Jared Goff. He's had moments in this league where he's looked good, but overall, I think he kind of is what he is right now. And they don't really have any receivers either for him to throw the ball to.
Yeah, no. I think his deficiencies were a lot easier to hide when he was with the Rams because they had so much talent around him.
Right. Yeah. It's the more you can see his limitations. I mean, the thing that he was really good at, the thing that a lot of people really said when he was coming out of college was, at least from a college on a college level, he was a very accurate passer. No one talked about his arm strength because it was just kind of average, and his mobility kind of the same way. But the one thing he was a very, very accurate passer, and he's not even really that anymore. He's actually kind of erratic in terms of throwing the ball. And I know that in the one game, the Lions have been pretty much in every game this year, with the exception of the Cincinnati game, and he was really bad in that game. And that was the game when it was over with. The coach, Dan Campbell, kind of came out and in his post-game press conference said, that's our quarterback's got to start making some throws. I mean, he just laid it right on him that day, and that's true. I mean, they've got some players on this team, and they certainly have an offensive philosophy, but right now they don't have a quarterback that's playing consistently enough to win a game for them.
And their O-line, I mean, they've given up a lot of sacks too. And Goff will take a sack. He'll stand back there and get. I think they've allowed 17 sacks in 7 games. So maybe this is a game where, I mean, Eagles edge rushers have 1.5 sacks in 7 games. Maybe this is a game where, who knows? Maybe Barnett can get half a sack. Break into positive numbers here. But the matchups look like. Look, I think this D-line is really underachieved this year, but maybe this is a game where they can make their presence felt a little bit.
They could, for the reason that you just said. I mean, Goff, among the many issues that he has, one of them is holding the ball too long. And his receivers, his wide receivers especially, don't get a whole lot of separation, which leads to him holding the ball. So the Eagles pass rush could get there. Although I will say the kid that they drafted, the first-round pick, Sewell, the big tackle, is a good player. I mean, he's come in and they put him at left tackle, and he's he's pretty good. He's more than holding up his end of the bargain. So if that's Barnett's side, I wouldn't be expecting Barnett to have a whole big game because from what I've seen, this Sewell kid he's legit. But otherwise, I just want to see if Gannon brings more to the table this week. I think he can. I certainly think that one of the ways you can take control of this game is by getting pressure on Goff. The opportunity will be there. I don't think you have to worry about the deep ball strike because they don't even try to do that. I mean, I think this is an opportunity to bring in a really aggressive defensive game plan for the first time all year and have some real success with it. I think that has to be what they're thinking right now because they certainly can't sit in basically kind of a prevent defense and just let Jared Goff dink and dunk them to death. I mean, that would just be beyond silly.
Ray, I wanted to get your take on Fletcher Cox when he talked after the game. It was, some frustration kind of leaked out from him.
Right.
What did you make of that? I mean, because he's obviously their highest paid player. He's a defensive captain. And I think he made some valid points. What did you think of just the message and also the fact that you have a guy speaking out after week 7?
Yeah, that was pretty telling. And I think it brought a lot of things to the surface. I think it kind of set the mood for the week because I think one of the questions that I think everybody was asking after the last 2 games, but specifically after the Raiders game was, gee, do you think the players still believe in this coaching staff? I mean, it was a very logical question to ask. And here's one of your best players coming out and making it very clear that he has some issues with the coaching staff. So that started a whole different discussion in the city this week. That surprised me because Fletcher's generally not a guy that opens the door to that kind of controversy. But I think it just speaks to the level of frustration that everybody down there is feeling. And the stuff that Cox said is right. I mean, he is a 3 technique kind of player. He is an up the field kind of player. That's how he made it to the Pro Bowls. That's how he became the player that he is. That's how he plays. The idea of playing in a read and react kind of style or that kind of thing that's just not him. And I think he's, one of the things that we always talk about with coaching is good coaching is really playing to the strength of your players. And I think he wasn't just talking about himself, but I think what he was kind of addressing was the overall defense and how they feel that this defensive philosophy and the individual play calling isn't necessarily playing to the strength of the personnel here. The linebackers are the linebackers. I don't know that in any system, any of them would be particularly good, but I think that certainly Cox could be more effective. And I think your 2 corners could be more effective if they were allowed to press and play tighter coverage as opposed to play in the zone. So I think that's kind of what it was. Fletcher has been his production has been in decline for a couple of years. I think we've all seen that as he gets older. It's not like he was a double-digit sack guy last year and a dominant player last year, and all of a sudden with a new coaching staff, he's not making plays. I mean, his career has kind of been trending downward anyway. But I think that he's still right in saying that the way he's being utilized here is not playing to his advantage at all.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I also think he needs to show more accountability, and he has not played well. And right. I'm not sure if the scheme was tailored 100% to what he wanted, if he would be making plays. Maybe we'll see. I don't like the way he's playing, and I understand his frustration and understand he's not being used the way he's used to and the way he wants to be used. But he's not the same player. And
I think you're right. And I mean, this notion that he's being double and triple teamed all the time, and that's not really true. I mean, teams are not afraid to block him one-on-one now. They really aren't. I mean, if you go back and you look at it, he gets one-on-one block more than people realize, and he's reached a point now where he just has trouble getting off of it. I mean, it used to be he would just eat up a one-on-one. Now, not so much. And so, yeah, I think that his career has been, and right now where he is at 30, he's just a shadow kind of what the player he used to be. And his days of dominance are certainly behind him. but I think the frustration he's voicing is like, whatever I have left, it ain't being showcased in this defense. I could be more productive. I can certainly be more productive than I'm being asked to be now. I think that's kind of what it is. But I think the larger question, Dave, is, how much of that same thought is pervasive in the locker room with other players thinking about their situation and their unit and wondering, why the coaches are doing what they're doing. Once you get one of the differences between the Eagles and the Lions coming into this game is that the Lions, even at 0-7, if you watch them, they're still playing hard. They really are. I mean, they're playing hard. They're not great. They're far from great, but they are playing hard. You don't see any indication. You don't see players bickering on the sidelines. You don't see players and coaches bickering on the sidelines. You get the feeling that they're still playing hard and they're still buying into what Dan Campbell is preaching. I think we saw certainly last Sunday and this week that that's probably less true with the Eagles. And that's one of the issues coming into this game. The Lions they're a winless team, but they're a team that doesn't seem to be in dysfunction. Whereas the Eagles, even with 2 wins, I think are beginning to show signs of that.
Yeah, it's fair. And you can really go on that defense. You can go to every level and you can put yourself in their shoes and find problems with what they've done defensively. Like if I'm Josh Sweat, I'm thinking they haven't unlocked me. If I'm Alex Singleton, I'm thinking, give me some help. I'm not that good. I can't do this on my own. And Darius Slay, obviously, we know he'd like to be a man more. I want to flip it to offense because this is something we talked about on our last podcast. And it's not something that we think is going to happen this weekend. But Gardner Minshew, now that he's the backup, me and Reuben at least think it kind of cracks open the door that if things don't get better at some point this season, we might see him. And I was kind of just wondering if you think that's possible too, and if there would be some benefit to it.
I think it is possible. I think it is possible. If Hurts continues playing the way he's playing now, I think down the road, this could become a matter of self-preservation for the head coach. And he may look at Gardner Minshew as a guy that, maybe he can run this offense better than Jalen Hurts and maybe give us a better chance to win a few games and show the guys upstairs that I kind of know what I'm doing. And at a certain point, coaches have to be mindful of that. If they know that all of a sudden that the heat has really been turned up, and people are wondering how much of this is your fault versus how much of it is the player's fault. Sometimes a coach will just, even though he'll say, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to make a change at the key position because I think this guy can run the offense better than Jalen right now. And just let's go win a couple games and take some of the heat off. I could see that happening. I really could. Now, I don't subscribe to that. I would rather not do that if I were the Eagles. I mean, my feeling if I'm the Eagles is I went into this year, and I think we all talked about this, was going into this year with the idea that this year was all about finding out if Jalen Hurts is the guy. And unless he gets hurt, just let him play it out. And at the end of the year, at least you hope at the end of the year, can you really go forward with Jalen Hurts with the idea that he can be your quarterback? And then you go into the next year's draft with all the picks. And then you don't necessarily have to think about trading them or investing in a quarterback. We feel like we've got a quarterback we can win with. You kind of need to know that at the end of the year. Well, if you pull the plug on Jalen Hurts and you find out Gardner Minshew isn't the answer, which I don't think he would be, you finish up the year and now you still don't know about Jalen Hurts, and now you don't know what your future is. I wouldn't do it. I mean, even if things really, really continue bumping down this road, I would stay with Jalen Hurts all the way through the season, barring injury. If he's able to play, I want him to play. But I could see the pressure becoming such that I could see the coach making a move. I wouldn't do it, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, my thing is, unless you think Gardner Minshew has a chance to be your long-term guy, there's really no value in it. If you had a really hot young prospect, high draft pick on the bench, yeah, that's different. But Gardner Minshew's not that guy. Might play better than Jalen, but I don't think Jalen's been that bad that it's time to give up on. Like I don't think we know the complete picture. We might be getting closer to it, but I look at that first drive against the Raiders, and they ran the ball and they protected, and he made some nice throws, and they actually looked like an offense. They looked like an NFL offense for one series, and then Miles got hurt, and they started throwing more, and the other backs just aren't as good, and it all kind of fell apart. But that was kind of a window into, to me, what Jalen could look like with some help around him. It's so hard for me to really evaluate him. Because everything around him, the play calling, the protection, the run pass balance has, even the receivers, none of it is really helping him. So it's really hard for me to know who he is.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's become a real problem in these last weeks with the way teams have been playing against the Eagles, the way they've been moving the ball, the way they've been controlling the ball, is that the offense is off the field for long stretches of time. I mean, the Raiders game, after the Raiders got to 30 points, the game was over. I mean, all that stuff in the fourth quarter really didn't matter. But up to that point, when the Raiders, at the point where they get it up to 30 points and the game's kind of over, Hurts had only thrown 11 passes. Because the other team is controlling the ball, moving the ball, scoring points, and your offense goes on the field and comes right off the field. Hurts had only thrown 11 passes up to that point, which was almost fully three quarters. And that's happening way too often because other teams are able to move the ball so readily against this team and they're not getting turnovers. The offense, you got Hurts and the offense is off the field for long stretches of time. And that's part of the problem too. It's all, this term of complementary football, the Eagles are the opposite of, there's nothing complementing anything with the way they're playing right now. And that's part of it. But I think I'm with you, Reuben. I've seen Hurts do some good things. I have. And I think there's real talent there. But I think you have to give him the fullest opportunity to play out this season to prove whether or not that's starting level guy can take you to the playoffs talent, or it's a guy who's, can play in the league, be a capable backup, but that's really kind of what he is. But by the end of the year, I think you have to know what he represents, one or the other, so you can then make the bigger decisions moving forward.
I used the phrase uncomplimentary football in my 10 observations. I couldn't think of anything better, and I didn't have any time to think about it. But there was a stretch where the Raiders ran 31 plays, scored 30 points, and the Eagles ran 7 plays and had no first downs. And, so it went from being a competitive game where they were balanced on offense to being down 4 possessions and you're throwing every down. And that's just not a fair way to evaluate anybody.
I know you guys go back and look at the game again, as I do. And one of the things that struck me in this game was if you take quarter number 2 and quarter number 3, and you just look snap by snap the Eagles didn't win a snap. Like every snap on both sides of the ball for 2 whole quarters, they lost every snap. To a Raiders team that's okay, but I don't think is great. But for half the game, you lost every snap on both sides of the ball, and that's the kind of stuff that's just really scary.
Yeah, that was the first time this year where there's been stretches where they've given up a lot of points in bunches, but that was the first stretch, those 2 quarters, where I thought they're not even competing right now. Mm-hmm. They're just not a competitive football team right now. And then they scored, the usual garbage time, couple of touchdowns once it got out of hand. And I think the Raiders lost interest. But, by then the lead was insurmountable. But you're right. That was really hard to watch. That was a scary stretch. That did not inspire a whole lot of confidence.
No, I had a couple guys who are real fans. Like way back forever fans. Thick and thin, seen the bad times, remember Q Herrick, kayak. Went out
drinking with Don Looney.
Yeah, not quite, but close. But really thick and thin, bleed green guys who said, 2 of them just stopped me this week and said, I turned it off after the third quarter. That I turned it off. They said, I've never done that with the Eagles in the past. But this game was so uncompetitive and so discouraging that it was the first time in their memory they actually ever turned off an Eagles regular season game. And I can understand it because at that point that you're talking about, that's really how bad it was.
Yeah, the problem with that is that's the only time the Eagles score any points is in the fourth quarter.
That's true.
Getting blown out. They missed all the good stuff. Right. Before we let you go, you mentioned.
I think the only people watching in that fourth quarter were people who had like Eagles players on their fantasy team, maybe, and maybe people that had bet money on the game, hoping that the Eagles could get them a backdoor cover. But other than that, if you were just a football fan, there was really no reason to keep watching.
Yeah, it was ugly. And you mentioned they didn't really compete. And you mentioned the Lions have competed. So that leads us to the last question here. Who you got?
Oh, the Lions?
Yeah, on Sunday. What do you think?
The temptation to take the Lions is very strong.
Do it.
Really is. It really is. But
break the tie. Break the tie, right?
I'm taking the Eagles. I'm taking the Eagles because the Lions. What it really comes down to is I think Jared Goff is going to be this week Sam Darnold. And you look back on the game they won in Carolina, the Eagles didn't play great, but they got a big play on special teams, and then Darnold couldn't make a play and basically handed them the game. I think it's going to be kind of the same thing here. I think that the Lions, if you look at their performance this year, I mean, geez, they're still not very good. I mean, their last 30 possessions have scored 3 touchdowns. I mean, they're 0-7 for a reason. And as even though the Eagles have massive problems, certainly right now, both on the field and internally, I think that's pretty clear. I still think they have enough to get by the Lions this week. So I think it's almost certainly going to be ugly, but I feel like the Eagles are going to come out of this with a win that's probably going to be a lot like the Carolina win. Not pretty in any way, certainly not artistic, because these aren't those kinds of teams. But I have a feeling that either, maybe more likely, the Lions will find a way to lose than the Eagles find a way to win. But I think they're going to come out of this with a W.
All right, Ray. Well, thanks. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. I'll look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
All right, Ray. At Nissan, we just made your choice for a new car an easier one than ever with our most exciting and fuel-efficient lineup. Choice is yours. Get great offers across our full line. Shop your local Nissan store today at nissanusa.com.
Thank you to Ray, as always. Rube, he's picking the Eagles in this game. I think I am too. How about you? It's tempting.
I'm leaning that way. The one thing that jumps out at me is the Lions haven't scored more than 19 points since the opener.
Yeah.
I think the Eagles can score 20. I think about the quarterbacks that have beaten the Eagles, and other than Garoppolo, they're all elite. And Garoppolo put up 17 points on them. That was just a game where the offense had a lot of issues. I don't see the Lions being capable of scoring, more than 20 points against anybody. So I'm leaning toward picking the Eagles.
Yeah, I am too. And I think this is going to be one of those weeks where we all pick the Eagles.
But if you and Ray are picking the Eagles, I can, maybe.
Yeah, if you want to try to get a game on us, because we're at the top of the leaderboard right now.
Yeah, we're 6-1. I'm not definite, but I'm leaning Eagles. I have to decide this afternoon. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, you have until tomorrow.
Yeah, I like to do it today, but
I'll tell you, I'm picking the Eagles. I think they're going to win this game, but it might be one of those weeks where just about everyone picks the Eagles, but they're real tempted to pick the Lions because it's not a given. And I think people want to I think I want to make that point. I think you want to make that point that, the Eagles should win this game, but there are no easy games anymore.
Right. Also, I don't want to fall a game behind you guys picking on a team that hasn't won a game.
I get that.
So that might not be a good look.
All right. The last topic we wanted to talk about today was the Eagles receiver core, the young receiver core, the top 3 all in years 1 or 2. Look, Devontae Smith has been good. He hasn't been, we've seen the glimpses of it, and he's had really good moments. I think he needs to find a little more consistency. But I'm not worried about Devontae Smith still. I think he's going to be a basement. His basement is a very good player.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
After that, you start to wonder a little bit. You have Jalen Reagor, last year's first round pick, who not only has he not been productive this year, but really in the last 4 games, the Eagles aren't even working to get him the ball anymore like they were at least in the beginning. They were trying to find ways, like there were clearly concerted effort to get him involved, and we're not even seeing that anymore.
Yeah, and we were talking, I guess, at practice or in the interview tent today about how his game the other day was kind of like practice. Like in training camp, you would see him make a spectacular one-handed back of the end zone, pull it in, get both feet in, but he wouldn't catch another ball that whole day. And that's kind of what Sunday was in Vegas. He had that, really incredible catch in traffic. I don't even know if the ball was intended for him. But
it was like a scramble drill, and Hurts just kind of threw it up.
That was his only catch. And, you just wonder, I don't see him ever being a high volume kind of, 7 for 88 type guy. And he's just so limited. I don't think he's a great route runner. I don't think he gets off the line of scrimmage particularly well. I don't think he tracks the ball very well. I don't think he does anything really well. And I think he's just a guy. He was a first-round pick, and I think he's just a guy. And I won't even talk about who they didn't draft because we've been down that road enough times. But I think he's putting in the work. I think he's trying. I think the effort's there. I just don't think he's very good.
Yeah, and it's a problem because even if he was an average receiver, which he's not, he's on track to have basically the same season he had last year.
But four fewer yards per catch.
Yeah. It would be, if he continues on this path, it'll be another very disappointing season. If Devontae becomes a star, all they would need Jalen Reagor to be is like an average receiver, and they'd be okay. Because Quez Watkins, I think, has some potential too. But we're 7 games into this. He's 7 games into his second season, and I don't see it. And I think the most frustrating thing is, like, I think there is talent. Like, I think he's explosive. Like, I see the explosivity that they drafted him for. Is that a word?
I'll take it. No, I'll take it.
Thanks. Because at times it's there. Like that catch. Look, I know it's in garbage time, but the defensive backs were still not trying to let him catch the ball, and he skies up over 3 of them and hauls it down. And we've seen some of the explosiveness. That's it. It's not explosive.
I like the first
explosivity.
What
did I say?
Yeah, explosivity.
It's explosiveness.
Okay. But not only did he catch it, he came down, kept his balance, turned the corner, and scooted in.
Yeah, and we've seen it on returns at times.
Yeah.
That explosivity to really kick it into gear. So that's what's frustrating is he had one trait that they drafted him for, and you see it, but it's just not enough. It's just not.
And Quez, I mean, we know Quez can catch a deep ball as well as anybody in the league. Let's face it. He can track it like Deshaun. He can catch it. I'd like to see his game get a little more rounded. And, especially if Reagor isn't going to be that guy who can catch 5 for 80, and be that clear number 2 guy that any number 1 needs, take pressure off him. A typical game for Quez is like 1 for 43. That's great. But, if he's going to be the number 2 guy, he's got to really, polish that mid-range game. And, they talked a lot in the summer about getting him the ball on short stuff and letting him use his speed. And we've seen it occasionally, but not very often at all. Preseason game we did. He's so fast. You would think he'd be able to, and again, this is, goes into the quarterback, and his limitations. So, I'm a lot higher on Quez than Reagor right now.
And the snaps have kind of shown that from the team too. I mean, Reagor started up here and Quez down here, and there have been times recently where Quez gets more snaps than him, and he's earned that because he's just been a better player, a better receiver than Reagor. And it's tough that they talk about like, yeah, well, we have to get all these guys the ball. We have to get Rager the ball. They're talking about it like they're a good offense. Like it's a good problem to have, but figure out a way to make this work because
we got to get all our bad
guys
players the ball.
But like, how many players do you think they should really prioritize getting football to?
Well, Goddard, Devontae, Quez, and yeah.
And Miles when he's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the focus of the offense. I wonder if there'd be some value in getting Greg Ward out there a little more. Just because he's going to catch the ball. He can move the sticks. He's pretty good third down guy.
Yeah.
I'd rather see him out there on 3rd and 7 than Rager. I mean,
I guess, but the problem with Greg Ward is, and this isn't a shot at him, I think we all understand, we know what he is, right? Like at least with.
But if you want, I know what you're saying. I mean, his ceiling is lower than Jalen Rager's, but the more we see Rager, the more I wonder. I mean, Greg Ward can help you win a game now and move the sticks and give Jalen another set of downs and keep the defense off the field. On 3rd and 7, maybe he should be out there.
You know what I'd like to see, honestly? I'd like to see more Rager in the slot. I would. I think that with his explosion, the one thing he has, if you can get the ball to him quickly, then maybe you have a chance to get something out of him and get the ball to him quickly, not on bubble screens and end arounds. I'm looking at his snaps, 72 in the slot compared to 263 out wide. If I were the Eagles, I'd start to narrow that gap and I'd get Quez outside a little bit more. I'd switch things up.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's crazy that wide receivers failing to develop has been a curse on this franchise for decades. I mean, you go back to Kenny Jackson, who's the 4th pick in the draft in '84, and all the way on, through, Freddie Mitchell and Nelly and Reggie Brown and Todd Pinkston was a 2nd round pick. He wasn't awful, but I mean, you go right on through these names for decades. These guys haven't panned out, and
they've had a few. They have
Deshaun and Macklin.
Yeah.
Like for 30 years. I mean, since Fred Barnett, I mean, Deshaun and Macklin, Jordan Matthews had 3 really good years. He's had injuries and he never panned out after that. But, as far as a long, productive career, Macklin and Deshaun. That's it. So it's tough.
If Devontae does like we think, he's still the 10th pick. It's easier to hit in the 10th pick than it is 21.
Yeah, you look at the Super Bowl season, and it's like Torrey Smith really had a bad regular season. He didn't do anything, and then he had a great postseason. Nelly, who didn't do anything before that year or after that year, all of a sudden played really well. Well, I guess he played well last year for the Raiders, but then he had this incredible postseason and Super Bowl. Somebody was looking out for this team that year, but I mean, this position has been a scourge of this franchise literally for decades. It's crazy, but Devontae's got to be great at number 10. He's got to be great.
Yeah, he does. And I still have faith that he will be. I haven't seen anything to move me off that point.
Yeah, I agree. Had more drops than I expected.
Yeah, and I think Nick Sirianni talked about the need for his players the young receivers to be better in contested catches and on balls that are off the mark. And some of that might have been directed at Devontae because, you can call them drops, and I guess they are because they hit him in the hands, but less than perfect throws, certainly, on a lot of them from Jalen Hurts. So in order for this offense to work, you're probably going to need your receivers to catch balls that aren't great because the quarterback has some accuracy issues.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought Devontae, the first one, I thought was all him. The third one was probably mainly Jalen. The second one, I actually don't remember, but I think he's got to be a little better on balls that aren't perfect. And you're right. I mean, if he's going to be the quarterback, there's going to be balls behind these guys, and sometimes you got to make those catches if you're going to be a great receiver.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else before we wrap this up?
No,
Cool.
no.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button there and subscribe as well. Sunday, 1 o'clock, Eagles Lions will be recording a podcast after that game. Hopefully a win, because I don't know if we can, how we're going to hold up in a post-game loss to another.
If they lose, we might just come in, do the positivity corner, and get out. Just tell it get
Yeah,
beaten.
I don't know if the whole thing might have to be a positivity corner.
Like a 4-minute podcast.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.